How's it going, everyone? In today's video, we're going to get a quick introduction to UV, a fast Python package manager and project tool. If you have ever waited on pip, UV is a nice upgrade for everyday work. In this video, I'm going to focus on what UV does, the core workflows, and a tiny adoption checklist. Then you can choose whether you want to use it or not. That's completely up to you. My recommendation is to start with UV for new projects and keep it simple at first. Now, before we dive into the details, I just want to mention that I'm using Z, the IDE, for this tutorial. If you'd like to follow along with the same IDE, you can find the download link in the video description box down below. Let's get started with a fast overview and a few practical sections. Then we will walk through hands-on demos, which you can copy and run. To start this video off, let's talk about what UV is. So first of all, UV is a fast Python project tool and package manager. It handles virtual environments, installs, and running commands in one place. Personally, I like it because it feels like a faster, more consistent alternative to pip plus venv. And if you've worked with Rust's cargo, this will feel very familiar. The workflow of using pyproject.toml for dependencies, log files for reproducibility, and running commands without manual activation is very similar to how cargo works. Now, this is just a little overview on how the core workflow would look like. So first we have the project creation and setup. UV can create a new project layout for you. So you start with a clean structure instead of a blank folder. Number 2, virtual environments. UV manages virtual environments directly, which means you do not need to switch between different tools to create and activate environments. Number 3, dependency installation. UV installs packages quickly and consistently, while still supporting the same dependency ecosystem you already use. Number 4, running commands inside the environment. UV can run Python commands or scripts inside the environment without you having to manually activate it. And getting started with UV is super simple. All we need to do is either run the curl command or the Windows PowerShell command. And these commands can be found on the docs.astral.sh website in the UV section. And I'll be leaving a link to this section of the website in the description box down below. Since I'm on a MacBook, I'm going to copy the macOS and Linux command. Then I'm going to open up a terminal, which can either be done inside your project or through the dedicated terminal on your OS. So here I'll insert the command and wait for it to download. I don't mean to complain, but it would have been nice if there was an indicator. But what you should see as an output is that everything's installed. So what we're going to talk about first is how we can upgrade from venv, or the virtual environment, to UV. If you already have an existing project using venv and pip, you might be wondering how to migrate. The good news is that it's actually pretty straightforward, and you don't have to rewrite any of your code. First of all, let's talk about what you need to do. If you have a requirements.txt file, UV can work with that directly. You can also migrate to a pyproject.toml file if you want, but it's not required right away. Here's the basic migration process. Let's say you have an existing project with a requirements.txt file like this one. Here we can start using UV right away by running UV pip install r requirements. I am terrible at typing. .txt. So the whole command will look like this. And I still spelt it wrong. Require means. This will install all of the dependencies using UV's fast resolver. Now, if you want to fully migrate to UV's workflow, you can convert your requirements.txt file to a pyproject.toml file. Personally, I like to do this because it gives you better dependency management and log files. But you can take your time with this step. So again, instead of having this requirements.txt file, we would have this toml file. To convert from requirements.txt to pyproject.toml, you can use UV init in your existing project directory. In this case, I'm going to get an error because the project is already initialized. But if I were to remove this and delete it and run it one more time, it would create that file for me. And then we can use UV add to add the dependencies one by one, such as requests and whatever the other one was, rich. So UV add rich. And now we have those dependencies in our project. The nice thing about this migration is that you don't have to change your virtual environment right away. You can keep using your existing venv while you transition, or you can delete it and let UV create a new one with UV venv. One thing to keep in mind is that if you're working with a team, you'll want to make sure everyone is on board with the migration. But since UV is compatible with the standard Python packaging ecosystem, it shouldn't cause any conflicts. My recommendation is to start by using UV for new projects, and then gradually migrate your existing projects when you have time. There's no rush, and you can use both tools side by side if you need to. But now let's use it in a little feature demonstration. Then we're going to use everything we learned in an example project. So first we need to initialize a new project. So inside the terminal, we'll type in UV init demo UV, which will be our project. And of course, we want to navigate to it. So cd demo UV. Next, we want to create and use a virtual environment. And UV will manage the venv for you. So there will be no manual activation. So here we can type in UV venv. And as you can see, it created the venv for us. Then we can type in UV run Python -v, which will give us back the version of Python we're using. Now, as I mentioned, we can run the scripts without activation. This is the nice part, because UV runs commands in the environment automatically. As a demo, we can type in UV run Python -c, and we're going to print hello Bob. And I guess we're getting a parse error because I forgot to add quotation marks there. Or there's something else I did wrong because I'm using different quotation marks. And now it worked. But now let's clear that and add some dependencies. So here we'll type in UV add requests, and then we can type in UV sync. And just to verify that we imported requests, I'm going to type in UV run Python import requests, and we're going to print requests dunder version. And since we successfully installed requests, it's going to give us back the version number. Then we're going to export a lock file for reproducibility. And this is great for repeatable installs. So here we just have to type in UV lock, and it will lock the file. And that's how simple it is to use UV. But now let's create an actual project and use it in an actual project. And for this project, we're going to create a simple script that fetches a quote from an API and displays it nicely. So let's start this project from scratch. I'm going to delete all of that. And inside the terminal, in our project, I'm going to type in UV init just to set it up. Now let's add the dependencies we need. So here we'll type in UV add requests to fetch the data, and UV add rich to display the data nicely. And this will automatically update the project.toml file, or the pyproject.toml file. As you can see, when we go to pyproject, we'll have all the dependencies. And since this is just to show you how UV works, I'm not going to explain all the code, but I will paste it in, just to show you that the dependencies work, even if the code editor is complaining. But what's important to note here is that we have a function called fetchJoke, which uses the requests library, and which also uses the rich module. As you can see here, we're using the console and the panel to display the information. Now to run this code with the dependencies, all we need to do is type in UV run Python main.py. And that will give us a random programmer joke, which obviously is going to be about Java. How cool is that? And just because you asked for it, I'm going to run it one more time, so that you can get another little joke. But that's it. No manual activation, no worrying about whether your dependencies are installed. UV handles everything for you. And the nice thing about this workflow is that if someone else clones your project, they can just run UV sync. And everything will be set up exactly the same way. So how does UV fit into your toolchain? If you currently use pip plus venv, UV replaces that combo with a single tool and a faster workflow. If you work on teams, UV helps reduce works on my machine issues by keeping installs consistent. If you are onboarding new developers, UV makes setup simpler because the steps are more predictable. Now, when is UV a good choice? Well, UV is a good choice when you have new projects where you want a clean, fast setup. It's also good for existing projects where installs are slow or inconsistent. And finally, it's good when you have teams that want a single tool for environment plus packages. And here are some common questions. Is UV only for new projects? The answer is no. You can adopt UV in existing projects without rewriting your code or changing your dependencies. Next, do I have to stop using pip forever? The answer is no. UV is compatible with the Python packaging ecosystem, and it is designed to feel familiar if you already know pip. And finally, does UV change how I write Python code? No. UV is about tooling and workflow, not how you write code. Anyway, that just about wraps up everything I wanted to talk about in today's video. I do hope you learned something about UV and will consider using it. Of course, feel free to continue using pip. I use pip in nearly all my videos, but here and there I might start transitioning to UV because it's really cool and very simple to use. So yeah, as always, let me know in the comment section down below whether you have any comments or questions. Otherwise, with all that being said, as always, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.